You voted for a man who promised you cheap gas, an end to wars, and a return to normal life. A year and a half has passed, and gas now costs over $4 on average across the country, which is $1 more than before. America is at war, inflation is at a 3-year high and has just reached 4% annually. And every evening the TV explains to you that the person you voted for is the one to blame for all this. The question isn't whether it's true, but whether it's the whole truth. Or are they once again telling us only half the story? Today I'll try to give you the whole picture from beginning to end, and in the end, you'll decide for yourself what's really going on. So, Part 1. How Trump came to power and what he promised. November of 2024. Donald Trump returns to the White House with one of the most convincing mandates in recent decades, almost 80 million votes. Why? Not because Americans suddenly loved his personality, not because they like his tweets or his style. They voted for specific things. The first is the economy, gas at $2, groceries at normal prices, the end of the inflation hell that the country has spent 3 years in under Biden. The second is the border. Stop illegal migration, right? This was not a fringe demand. This poll showed that the majority of Americans, including Latinos, supported closing the borders. People are tired of chaos, of cities overwhelmed by migrants, of the feeling that laws don't work the same for everyone. Third, no new wars. I will end wars, not start them. That's what he said. And people believed. Because during his first term, he really didn't start any. That was the contract, signed at polling stations all over the country. And then, after that, immigration. How the media actually flipped the narrative. In the first months of the second term, Trump starts fulfilling his promises about the border, deportations, raids, detention of illegals. And here's something important happens that needs to be understood. Most Americans supported stopping illegal migration. This is a fact confirmed by dozens of polls. But when the actual deportation began, TV images changed how people saw it. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, they found what they were looking for: crying children, families separated at school buses, mothers with infants in their arms, and ICE officers. Every evening, for an hour, with music. And then this happened. The American who in the morning thought the border should be closed. In the evening, he looked at the screen and thought, well, you just can't do that. It's not deception in the crude sense. It's a matter of framing. It's an editorial decision, which story to tell. Out of 1 million deportations, they chose those 10. The ones they chose, the ones that looked the harshest, and to show them over and over again and again. Trump's ratings on immigration started to fall, not because the policy changed, but because the picture changed. So, lesson 1. In a media war, the one who picks the shot wins. Editor. Well, or, whatever it's called in each particular case. Now, the Iranian bomb, what you haven't been told. The most important thing, I think. That's what explains it all. Why did Trump, who promised not to go to war in February 2026, give the order for military strikes on Iran? To answer this question, we need to go back probably more than 20 years. The year 2001, Ukraine under President Kuchma sells a batch of ballistic missiles to Iran. This is a fact confirmed by American intelligence. It has been documented multiple times in open sources and congressional materials. 6 more missiles. They went through Chinese intermediaries, but the final recipient turned out to be Iran itself. The Ka-55 missile range up to 3,000 kilometers. It is capable of carrying warheads, weighing several hundred kilograms, including nuclear ones. You'll be very pleased, nuclear ones. This is not a weapon for defense. This is a weapon for a strike on Israel, against American bases in the Persian Gulf, against the capitals of European allies. Thank you very much. So Ukraine, and personally Comrade Kuchma. Now the second element, Iran has been enriching uranium for 20 years. By 2025, according to estimates by the IAEA and also American intelligence, Tehran has accumulated enough highly enriched uranium to create about 10, as they wrote, nuclear warheads. We're talking about hundreds of kilograms of material enriched to 60% and above. This is already a direct path to weapons-grade level. And the third element, for several years, specialists worked in Iran. Some of them had post-Soviet nuclear experience. That means some with Ukrainian experience. They helped Iranian engineers understand the technologies for integrating warheads with missile delivery systems. This is not speculation. This is what American intelligence knew and wrote about in classified reports for years. Put it all together. Delivery systems with a range of 3,000 kilometers, plus material for nuclear warheads, plus growing technical competence. That is the red line, which Washington could not allow Tehran to cross. Why Tehran specifically? It's very simple. This is the only country in the world that talked about it from morning to night, 5 times a day. That as soon as we have nuclear weapons in our hands, we will strike Israel and American bases. Wow. Trump knew about this from day one of his second term. Intelligence reports. They were on his desk every morning, and he knew if Iran completed the assembly, it would be impossible to stop them. To bomb underground storage facilities at a depth of 80 to 100 meters under the Fordo Mountain is not the same as striking a surface target. Even the most powerful American bunker-busting bombs reach their limits there. In other words, either now or never. It wasn't a choice between war and peace. It was a choice between a controlled crisis today and nuclear blackmail tomorrow. February 28, 2026, the strikes began. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, and that's when everything Trump promised the voters started to fall apart before their eyes. Not because he wanted it to, but because it was the inevitable price of the decision, which he considered the only possible one. If it didn't take off, something else did. $100 and up. For the first time in years, I think Brent reached 114, if I'm not mistaken, at its peak. Gasoline at American gas stations has gone over $4.50 per gallon on average. That's the national average. In California, it was almost $7. A person who, back in 2024, voted for $1.02 per gallon was standing at the pump and paying twice as much. Inflation, which seemed to be going down, started rising again. Groceries, airline tickets, freight shipping, all depend on fuel. In reality, nearly everything depends on it. And Trump's approval rating plummeted. It dropped to 36% and regarding the economy down to 29%. Lower than Biden's. My God, the worst moments. Even among Republicans, 40% disapprove. Trump's actions on inflation. The man who was elected for the promise of an affordable life has come to be associated with an expensive war. And here the media machine stepped in again. Every evening. On all major channels. The same narrative every time. Trump dragged us into war. Trump can't handle the economy. Trump deceived the voters. Trump's inflation. Trump's war. Not a word about what Iran has actually been doing all these years. Not a word about the missiles bought in the early 2000s. Not a word about the hundreds of kilograms of enriched uranium under the mountain. Not a word about what would have happened in a year if no one had done anything. Just a picture. Trump declares war, prices go up, life gets more expensive. These are professionals at work. Technically, it's all true. Prices really did go up. The war really did start under Trump, but the context is missing. And without context, the truth becomes, what? You guessed it, a lie. Complete nonsense, a lie. An independent voter who watches the news for 20 minutes a day doesn't read intelligence reports. He sees the picture, and the picture tells him something is going wrong. Well, because this matters to you, those of you who live in the Russian-speaking diaspora, and watches this from, I would say, a special point of view. We've seen this before. We've seen how the narrative works when facts are replaced by an image. We know this tactic all too well. That's exactly why. What will start on June 19 will have a special meaning for us because something is changing now, and fundamentally, and that's what we'll talk about next. June 19. I would call it a turning point, not a reversal yet, a turning point. So Geneva, the signing of the memorandum between the US and Iran, I hope it will happen, but it still might not. It still might not. Right now, it's the 17th, just 2 days left. From this moment, Trump steps up to the microphone and says what he says. The media won't be able to ignore it, no matter how hard they try. Trump will say, well, of course I'm not putting words in his mouth, but the point will be this. I didn't drag you into a long war. I did what I had to do, because any president responsible for the security of his country is obliged to protect it. Iran was just steps away from nuclear weapons. They had delivery systems, purchased missiles, bought 20 years ago. They had the material, they had the specialists. We stopped it. In 38 days of active operations. Without ground troops, without thousands killed, the war is over. And then the most important thing, for every American standing in line at the gas station, the Strait of Hormuz is opening. Oil will flow. Futures are already dropping. 6 weeks, you'll see it at your gas station. It's not just a political statement, it's a promise, one that the market will start fulfilling immediately. And oil is already going down, right? Today. So here's light crude, $77 for futures. Futures are at $77, ladies and gentlemen, just a month ago. How much was it? 95. By autumn, with the Strait open, analysts are predicting 65 to 70. By fall, gasoline will be $3.20 to $3.50 a gallon instead of over $4. Inflation from 4 down to 2.5%. Inflation 3 at most. It's not magic. It's market physics, of course, right? Cheap oil, cheap transportation, cheap food, affordable living, exactly, cheap food. They voted in November 2024. People need time to feel it. People about 6 to 8 weeks before the elections, and we have 5 months left. Gentlemen, I have probably said many times, gentlemen, that judging by all the election calendars and the rest, Trump and the Republicans, in order to win in November, need to end the war. And to start all that, what we're about to talk about, to start no later than the end of May or the beginning of June. And then at some point I said the latest should be June 15th. And gentlemen, that's what we did. We came at the very last moment. I hope we made it. The 19th is still possible, but let's assume we made it. And what will start on the 19th then? First of all, a huge amount of dirty laundry will start coming out. I'll explain now. The economy is just the first front. At the same time, what political analysts call an informational paradigm shift begins. Put simply, it's simple. They're telling the truth about things that have been kept quiet for years. Cases that used to quietly sit in the Department of Justice's files are starting to move. And we're not talking about minor things. Schemes, vote rigging in a number of key cities. And with documents, with witnesses, with digital traces. Cases of bribery, kickbacks in the distribution of federal contracts, implicating Democratic members of Congress. Not enough? Stories about billions of dollars that went through USAID and other agencies to organizations affiliated with political donors. Well, meaning to the Democrats, again, all into their own pockets, to the Democrats, taxpayers' money, turned into money for the Democratic Party. It's called political capital, financial capital, in connection with a number of lawmakers linked to foreign lobbyists who acted in the interests of, oh, do you think our close friends? No. Beijing and Tehran. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are criminal cases with specific names, dates, and amounts. The difference between a version and a fact is very simple: arrest or charges being filed. Here, an unexpected figure enters the picture. Hunter Biden, a man whom his own father apparently considered the weak link. Hunter, who was convicted, pardoned, and who now, with resentment, yes, with resentment towards everyone, So, for the dad who was sacrificed for the sake of politics, Lenin for his brother and this one for his dad. He's not a hero, he's not a righteous man. He himself took part in the schemes that he describes. But that's exactly why they believe him where they wouldn't believe an outsider. He knows the system from the inside. He names names. That's important to him. There are documents, letters, correspondence, financial records. My party. I said, Hunter Biden, this bunch of people, these are his words, who have learned to speak eloquently about the people while stealing at the same time. Does he have the people too? That's the essence of his testimony, bluntly without diplomacy, but everyone understands. All this would have had a limited effect if the media landscape hadn't been changing, but it is changing. A year ago, they could have kept this quiet, because in reality, even the most convincing truth needs a channel to spread. If it's such an amazing truth, but nobody knows about it, then nobody knows about it. America's media landscape has been changing radically in recent months. CNN, the channel that for a decade was the main tool for shaping the left-wing narrative, is coming under new ownership. At the head of the editorial department is Bari Weiss, a journalist who left the New York Times precisely because it was impossible to speak the truth there. She is already running CBS. This is not just a reshuffling of personnel, this is a damn revolution. Well, I mean, an editorial revolution. Newsmax is no longer just an original channel for the far right. That audience has grown to levels comparable to Fox. And Fox, at the same time, is also trying to regain the trust of the conservative audience that was lost after 2020. But perhaps the most important thing is not television. It's the blogosphere, it's YouTube, it's Subtrack, it's X. These are hundreds of authors in Russian, in English, in Spanish, with an audience of 1 million, 2, even 5 million people, people who are not dependent on advertisers, who don't need to get their materials approved by the legal department, who just say what they see. They have become America's new press. They are the ones who won't let what's happening be silenced. This means the following. For the first time in many years, the story of corruption and democracy in the political party will reach that part of the audience that has never heard it before. We live among people unaware of what we've known for years. They have no idea. When we speak, they respond, "What are you talking about? That's nonsense. You just made it up because it was never on TV." Because they watch CNN. If you thought all politicians were alike, now you'll see specific names and amounts. Maybe they are the same. It's just that some steal and others don't. Maybe these were caught and those weren't, but these are already caught. Let's call this the arithmetic of November. How will this affect the November elections? Trump's approval rating is 37 right now. Well, 37 or maybe 40, a good 40. That's critically low for a president whose party controls both houses of Congress. Historically, such a rating means losing from 20 to 35 seats in the House of Representatives. But history is not linear. The combination of several factors can change the equation. Well, the first factor is the economy, right? If by October gas costs $3.50 instead of $4.50, that's not just statistics. That's something a person feels every time they go to the gas station. And he goes there once a week. 5 months before the election, that's 20 reminders. Lower, 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 lower. He thinks something is changing. You're on the right track, comrades. The second factor is the war's end. Americans are pragmatic. They don't demand victory parades. They want their sons not to die in foreign countries. If the war ends and there were no huge losses and no occupation, that counts. The third factor is corruption cases. Well, not all Americans will follow the details, but the effect works differently. It's enough for a certain feeling to form. Oh, their hands aren't clean. This neutralizes the main argument of the Democrats. We are morally superior. Wait a second. What the hell kind of morality? You're thieves. The fourth factor, and it turned out to be critical, is called the media. When CNN stops having a monopoly on the left-wing narrative at every gas station, in every cafe, every shoe repair shop, every airport, everywhere, the equation changes. An independent voter who gets information from 5 sources instead of 1 thinks differently. The cumulative result when all 4 factors are implemented, Republicans, instead of the expected loss of 20 to 30 seats in the House, either keep the majority or lose only a minimal 5 to 10 seats. In the Senate, they are more likely to strengthen their positions. This is not a triumph, it's survival. But in politics, surviving the midterm elections is also a victory. We, the Russian-speaking diaspora, even if we speak English very well, look at these events from generally a slightly different point of view. You've noticed that, I'm sure, right? We know what state propaganda is. We know what the media sounds like when it serves the authorities and not the citizens. We know how to read between the lines. That used to be our specialty, right? To read between the lines in Pravda. There was no truth in Pravda and no news in Izvestia, and that's exactly why we see things that some Americans who grew up in a country with a free press don't see. They always believed in it and only watched CNN, but I don't trust CNN the way they did. But we see the choice of frame, we see the missing context, we see how the same story can be told in 2 completely different ways, and both times it will be the truth. So, is there no untruth here? It's all true, but only half the story is being shown, but we see something else. We see that in America, unlike in the countries many of us came from, the system works. The courts block the president's decisions. We may really dislike it, but they do block them. That is, they can. The press changes owners, but it doesn't shut down. So, hold on, that's possible too. The opposition exists, elections are held. Gentlemen, this is an imperfect system. It's a noisy, messy, expensive, and very often offensive democracy, but it's a system. And in 5 months, this system will deliver its verdict again. I don't want to end with a prediction, I want to end with an observation. Every time it seems like everything is broken, that the media is lying, politicians are stealing, and voters don't notice, history takes a completely unexpected turn. CNN is changing its editorial staff. Hunter Biden opens his, excuse me, I have to say it, filthy mouth. Oil prices are going down. The war is ending. A blogger with a laptop is gaining 1 million subscribers. And he says things that a major channel is afraid to say, and then he repeats it again, saying, guys, pay attention, yes, look at what I said. Information is like, well, water, it always finds a way. Always. And people, especially those who know what it's like to live without freedom, know how to value the truth. When they hear it. Of course, because for several years here we haven't heard the truth at all. 5 months isn't as short as it seems. It's a whole political eternity. And a lot will change in these 5 months. I don't know. I don't know exactly how the November elections will end. Nobody knows. But I know one thing. In a country where the law works, where the press can change, where one person with documents can change the narrative, the truth always has a chance, and that's already huge. Well, to put it in Russian, that's quite a lot. If this channel, ladies and gentlemen, has been useful to you, then subscribe to the channel. Our main channel, which is called, what's it called? Leon Weinstein US, right? Written together as one word. And also subscribe to Roadmap to Freedom. With that, we finish, and thank you for watching. See you soon.